I'm going to show off my Raspberry Pi setup that I'm doing for development on the Kitsune operating system. So here's my Raspberry Pi. You can see I've got the GPIO pins for the serial device plugged into this little dongle that I got from the electronics store, and this just kind of converts the serial to USB-C, and that just plugs into the back of my computer there. So right now, the Raspberry Pi is running in Linux mode, meaning it's running the Linux kernel. And I use the Linux kernel to develop and kind of figure out how things work at the low level, the hardware level on the Raspberry Pi. And I'll probably go into that more in a different video, but I'll walk you through what I do. I like to try to automate things and try to get as short of a feedback loop as possible. And I'm not screen capturing this time because I need to point the TV at here in the back and stuff. I'm being a little lazy. But so what I do, like let's say I wanted to add some sort of message to the kernel. So I just type in something like, I make my code change. There we go. And then save that, and I come over here and I run this command. This command does three things. This is just a little utility function that I made that builds the kernel. This next step copies the kernel image to the Raspberry Pi over the local network. And this last step reboots the Raspberry Pi. So we're going to run this, and it pretty much takes care of everything itself. So it's going to build. It's going to incorporate that new change I just punched in there. Great. And now it's copying it over the network. And now we should see, yep, it just kicked off the reboot. So there we go. Now we're rebooting. And you'll notice my monitor on the left there, that is connected to the output of that serial connector. So we should see there, we're already getting output from the Raspberry Pi, even though the device, the monitor wasn't set up yet. And then you see the same output coming on the display. So that's kind of handy because I can actually get some really early output from the Raspberry Pi. It all ends up in the demessage kernel logs anyway. It's just nice to have that, especially for the Kitsune OS, because it's very basic right now. So now we're at the login screen, and this is set up in such a way that I can actually just log in using the serial device. So if I look for that message in the kernel logs, hey, there it is. And so that's kind of what I do to keep the iteration cycles as short as possible when I'm experimenting with the Linux kernel. I've got a bunch of stuff like this. This is kind of everything I've been learning and figuring out about the Linux kernel. Like I learned here that Linux has a whole bunch of init call levels, 0 through 7, that are called peer, core, postcore, arch, subsys, FS, device, and late. And when you write a kernel module, I found out that you can have set up code to run in any one of these levels. So that's pretty cool. So that's what I do to quickly iterate and do development in what I call Linux mode. Now, if I want to switch back to the Kitsune OS, it's a little more complicated because, like I said, it's very basic. I don't have the network or file system or anything like that set up. But I do have a little command I call kmode. So if I hit kmode, that sets a variable, or it sets a file in my home directory. I have Raspi mode there. And if we look at that, it says Kitsune. And then if I type in the command lmode, that just switches it to custom, which is my custom Linux kernel. So if I just type in kmode and lmode, that updates that file to either Kitsune or custom. And then I have a udev rule show up, and I'll demo that right now. So here's the script. Oh, there we go. So I only have a couple of rules. That first line, it says whenever the computer detects the TTY ACM0 device, that it should set the mode to 666. That way I can, sorry about the focusing, that way I can access it without using sudo. And then it says whenever you detect a memory card being plugged in, to run this command. And I'll show you what that command looks like. That command is down here. It's copy kernel to Raspberry Pi. And so it's a pretty simple kernel, or excuse me, it's a pretty simple script. First, it's going to play a tone right here to let me know that it's started. This is just a little sound effect I got from one of my favorite games, Factorio on Steam, on Linux, pretty nice. It's going to mount the it's going to mount the root partition on the memory card first, and then the boot partition after that. And then depending on which mode I had set, it's either going to copy my Kitsune kernel over or the custom Linux kernel over. And then it's also going to update the, down here. Yeah, it's going to update the boot/config file, and that dictates, that tells the Raspberry Pi which kernel it wants it to boot. So when it's Kitsune, it's going to say, hey, boot the Kitsune kernel. When it's custom, it's going to say, hey, boot the custom kernel. So I'll do a demo of that right now. So I'm going to do K mode just to make sure we got this working. There we go. We're in K mode now. So now I just run around the back here, turn off my Pi. I'm going to do this one-handed. Slide the memory card out. And then I've got my little USB reader right here. Now hopefully, as I plug this in, you'll hear the tone. That means it's started. It's copying files over. And there's the tone that lets me know that it's done. Pop that out. Slide that back in. And we're going to turn the power back on. And hopefully when it reboots, it should have the latest Kitsune OS kernel. Yep, there it is. Now we're in Kitsune mode. And of course, I can switch back to Linux mode by typing in L mode and doing the same process. What I had to do before I had that set up was I would have to turn off the Raspberry Pi, take out the memory card, stick it into the memory card reader, run back all the way over here, open up my file explorer, drill down into the file, edit the file, copy over the kernel manually, then unmount the file system, run back over here, take the memory card out, plug it back in the Raspberry Pi, turn it back on, and then we'd start it. So now whenever I want to make a change to Kitsune OS, I do a pretty similar thing. Let me switch here. Yeah, so now if I need to make a change to Kitsune OS, I can, let's see here. So much code. I need to clean this up. So you see before it was saying hello Kitsune, I'm going to change it to say hello YouTube. Sorry, I'm trying to open up a terminal here. Open one-handed keyboard. There we go. And then I'm going to make, and it doesn't like my Z's. Try that again. There we go. So I still have to walk over to the Raspberry Pi to do a Kitsune OS update, but I only have to make one trip back here instead of two. So if I come out here, I do pretty much the same thing. Pop that bad boy in there. There we go. Turn it back on. One-stop shop. Now, there we go. And now if I hit my little hello command, which is the one key, I get hello YouTube. And my code is updated. I'm right now working on actually sending updates for Kitsune OS through the serial device. And hopefully I'll be able to cover that in one of my future videos. Thanks for watching.